Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for Game 4 of the ALDS between the Kansas City Royals and the Houston Astros. We're going to go over every at-bat and the stats and give our breakdown and analysis. The Astros headed into this game up 2-1 with a chance to close out the series at home. The Royals, facing elimination, needed to win to send it back to Kansas City for Game 5. And on the mound for Houston, Lance McCullers, and on the mound for Kansas City, Yordano Ventura. So to start things off in the top of the first, Escobar was hit by a pitch. Zobrist then grounded into a fielder's choice, Escobar out at second. So now Kane came up 1 on, 1 out. He flew out. Hosmer then popped out, and that would do it for the top of the first. So now on the bottom of the first, Ventura on the mound for the Royals. He got Altuve to foul out, then he struck out Springer. He hit Correa, and so Correa would take first. Then Rasmus hit a single, so now he had 2 on, 2 out for Gaddis, who struck out. So that would do it for the first inning. So now on to the top of the second. Morales would strike out. Moustakas then walked, and then Salvador Perez took McCullers deep to right, 403 feet. The 2-run shot put the Royals on the scoreboard first with the score 2-0 Kansas City over Houston. Alex Gordon then lined out and Rio struck out, and that would do it for the top half of the second, but not after the Royals had added 2 runs to the scoreboard. So now in the bottom of the second, Carlos Gomez comes to the plate and he hits a leadoff homer over the left field wall off Ventura, 363 feet, and now Houston put its first run on the scoreboard, cutting the Royals' lead to 1 with the score Kansas City 2, Houston 1. Ventura then got the next 3 batters out as he got Valbuena to fly out and then struck out Carter and Castro, and so that brought the second to a close, but not after both teams had scored in the inning. So 2-1 going to the top of the third, and McCullers would set down the side in order. He got Escobar to ground out, Zobrist flew out, and he struck out Kane. So now on to the bottom half of the third. Ventura on the mound strikes out Altuve and then strikes out Springer, and then comes to the plate Correa, and Correa goes deep over the left field wall, 410 feet, and this game is tied at 2 apiece. So a big home run, a solo shot for Correa, and then Rasmus then struck out, and that would bring the third to a close, but not after the Astros had tied this game up with that solo shot by Correa. It's now on to the top of the fourth. McCullers would strike out Hosmer, and then Morales grounded out. Moustakas then hit a single, and then Perez popped out, and that would do it for the top of the fourth. Now in the bottom of the fourth, Ventura would get Gaddis to fly out. Gomez bunted, and he grounded out to the pitcher on that bunt. Valbuena then walked, and Carter hit into a fielder's choice, and that would do it for the fourth inning. So now on to the top of the fifth. Gordon drew a leadoff walk. Rios then struck out, and Escobar struck out as well, and then Zobrist grounded out. So now on to the bottom of the fifth. Ventura would strike out Castro. Altuve would ground out. Springer then drew a walk, and then Carlos Correa came to the plate, and he hit a double driving in Springer as he picked up his second RBI of the game and gave the Astros their first lead of the game with the score 3-2 Houston over Kansas City. Rasmus was then intentionally walked to make it a force out at first, second, and third as Gaddis came to the plate, but he flew out, and that would bring the fifth to a close, but not after the Astros had taken the lead 3-2. So now on the top of the sixth, McCullers would strike out Kane. He got Hosmer to fly out, and Morales grounded out as he set the side down in order, and we are headed to the bottom of the sixth. So here in the sixth, Ventura would be done for the day as Kelvin Herrera would come in to relieve him. He would strike out the first batter he saw, Gomez. Then he walked Valbuena, but then he'd strike out Carter and Castro. So 3 strikeouts in the inning for Herrera, and we were headed to the seventh. McCullers still on the mound for Houston, and he would get Moustakas to ground out, and then he hit Perez. So Perez would take first, being hit by the pitch. And now McCullers was done as Harris would come in to relieve him. Gord came into a pinch run for Perez. He stole second. Gordon then struck out. And now Gore at second stole third, but it would be reviewed. Initially he was called safe, but upon further review he was ruled out at third. So the crowd went wild, and momentum seemed to have really. It already was a lead for Houston at this point, but it seemed like momentum was really heavily in their favor after that overturned call. They're at third base as they call Gore out. The first time Gore has ever been caught stealing in his young career. But now on to the bottom of the seventh. Herrera still on the mound for the Royals. He would walk Altuve, and then Madson would come in to relieve Herrera, and Springer struck out. So now Carlos Correa came to the plate, and Carlos Correa goes deep over left again, 381 feet as he hits his second home run of the game. This run, a 2-run shot, and it was now 5-2, Houston over Kansas City. Kobe Rasmus then came to the plate, and Rasmus takes it deep to right, 355 feet, and it was 6-2. So the Astros back-to-back home runs. Then Gaddis hits a single, and things just kept going. Marisnick would come in to pinch run for Gaddis. Gomez then hit a single, and now you had runners on the corners. And actually, Gomez ended up advancing on the throw. So Marisnick pushed it to third. Gomez advances to second. So you had two runners in scoring position for Valbuena with one out, but he flies out. And now Gonzalez came to the plate, and he would strike out. So they leave two runners stranded in scoring position in the bottom of the seventh after having picked up 3 runs in the inning off the 2-run shot by Correa and the solo shot by Rasmus, the back-to-back home runs. So now we're headed to the top of the 8th, 6-2. Houston looks like they're about to win this series, but not so fast. Here comes the Royals. Rios leads off with a single. Escobar then gets a single, and they have 2 on, no out. Zobrist then got a single, and the bases are juiced for Lorenzo Cain. Lorenzo Cain singles, and Rios comes in, and the bases are still juiced. So now Tony Sipp would come in to relieve Harris. Hosmer at the plate. He hits a single. That brings in Escobar, and the bases were still juiced, and it was now 6-4. So now Morales comes up to the plate. He hits into a fielder's choice. It brings in Zobrist and Cain on an error by Correa, and Hosmer ended up safe at third. And so now Dyson would come in to run for Morales. He stole second, and then Moustakas struck out, and Gregerson would come in to relieve Sipp. Of course, the 2-run score tied the game up at 6. So the game's tied at 6. Gregerson on the mound now. He walks Patera, and then Gordon comes to the plate, and Gordon grounded out, but that brought in Hosmer and moved Dyson and Patera over into scoring position at second and third respectively. This was now 7-6 as the Royals scored 5 runs in the top of the 8th. Rios then would draw a walk, and then Orlando would come in to pinch run for Rios, and Escobar came to the plate, but he would strike out. So that would bring it close to the top half of the 8th. A wild 8th inning, top half of the 8th inning, that saw 5 runs scored as they just kept getting the hits. They kept the bases loaded. They just loaded them up, kept getting hits, even scoring off the fielder's choice in the air, and then even grounded out and bringing in Hosmer later on. So a wild top of the 8th. And now to the bottom of the 8th, Wade Davis on the mound for Kansas City coming in to relieve Madson. And so then Lowry would pinch hit for Castro. He popped out, Altuve grounded out, and Springer struck out. So Davis set the side down in order in the bottom half of the 8th. So now on to the top of the 9th. Fields in to pitch in relief of Gregerson, and he would walk Zobrist. He then struck out Cain. Then Hosmer came to the plate with 1 on, 1 out, and Eric Hosmer goes deep to right, 442 feet, and it was now 9-6 as they extended their lead to 3 runs. Dyson then struck out, and Moustakas fouled out, but not after they had added 2 more runs with a 2-run shot in the top of the 9th to make it 9-6 going into the bottom of the 9th, as it looked like we were going to be playing a Game 5 after all. So Davis on the mound for Kansas City. He would let up a leadoff single to Correa. Then he struck out Rasmus. Tucker would pinch hit for Marisnick. He would strike out. And then Gomez came to the plate and flew out. And that brought this game to a close. A wild finish, as we saw 3 runs scored in the 7th by the Astros. And then we see 5 runs scored in the top of the 8th by the Royals. And then they add another 2 in the top of the 9th. And they go on to win 9-6 after having been down 6-2. So crazy finish at the end. A bunch of runs scored. We saw a lot of home runs in this game. We saw 5 home runs in this game. And for the pitchers, Madson ends up with the win for Kansas City. Davis picks up the save, and the loss goes to Sipp. And as for the starters, Ventura pitched 5 innings, allowed 3 earned runs. He struck out 8, and he had 4 hits allowed and 3 walks. McCullers 6 1/3 innings pitched. He allowed 2 runs off of 2 hits, 1 home run. He struck out 7 and walked 2. And for the Royals in relief, Herrera 1 inning pitched, 1 earned run, no hits. He did walk 2. He struck out 3. Madson in 1 inning pitched, allowed 2 earned runs off of 4 hits. He struck out 2. Davis in 2 innings of relief, 3 strikeouts, no earned runs, 1 hit allowed. Davis coming up clutch in this game for the Royals down the stretch. They're pitching the 8th and 9th innings. And the Astros in relief, their relief just kind of fell apart there, especially Harris. He pitched 2/3 of an inning in the 7th. He allowed 3 runs and 4 off of 4 hits. He had 1 strikeout. Sipp in 1/3 of an inning pitched, allowed no runs, 1 hit. And Gregerson 2/3 of an inning pitched, 2 walks, 1 strikeout, no hits, no runs, attributed to Gregerson. And Fields 2 earned runs off of 1 hit. He had 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. We look at the offensive stats in this game. Correa had a monster game, but it was all for naught as they would end up losing this one. It looked like they were on their way to winning it. It looked like the series was over there in the bottom of the 7th before the Royals just had other plans. They refused to lose. They were facing elimination, and they come up with a huge inning there in the top of the 8th. But Correa for the Astros, 4 for 4 with 4 RBIs in the game. He had 2 home runs and a double. And Gomez 2 for 5, Rasmus 2 for 4. And on the other side, Hosmer 2 for 5, 3 RBIs. He had a home run as well, that 2-run shot. Moustakas 1 for 4, Perez 1 for 2. Perez had that home run in the 2nd inning. He had 2 RBIs in the game. And Morales, although he was 0 for 4, he had an RBI as well. And Lorenzo Cain 1 for 5 with an RBI. And Gordon 0 for 3, but he had an RBI. Rios 1 for 3. Then Escobar was 1 for 4. Zobrist 1 for 4. Escobar crossed the plate once. Zobrist crossed the plate twice. So it was a wild game. Like I said, it looked like this series was over, especially once they went up 6-2. I thought, oh, well, they got this one. And the funny thing was, the announcer said, well, if they can make it 8, then this game is over. But they left those 2 runners stranded on 2nd and 3rd there in the bottom of the 7th. And then Kansas City comes out and scores 5 to take the lead 7-6. Of course, Hosmer added the 2-run shot in the 9th to add a little bit of insurance there. And just Davis shutting him down in the 8th and the 9th as he picks up the save. So it was a wild game in Houston. This series is headed back to Kansas City. It's now tied up at 2 games apiece. And we'll see what happens in Game 5. The Astros let this one slip out of their hands. The bats were hot in Houston. I mean, we saw 15 runs scored in this game combined between the 2 teams, the 5 home runs. It was definitely, if you like the long ball, this was the game for you. But it was a wild one. And now Kansas City forcing Game 5. They avoid elimination. And it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen. So far, this series, it's been back and forth. Each team is, 1-1, then the other team wins, and they win, and back and forth. They split in Kansas City. They split in Houston. We'll see who wins this final game, as it's now down to just 1 game. Winner go home. But as for Game 4, 9-6, the Royals win this one, evening up the series. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you had a good day and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.